this computer. Joe Glover, welcome back to the Marketing Study Lab podcast. The first time I've ever said that.
I feel so privileged.
Absolutely. Well, to be fair, I'm recording 2 podcasts back to back. So you're the first guest to be on more than once by about 2 hours.
Hey, I'll take that. I will take that.
Absolutely. Every win's a win. But just because this is your second time on here doesn't mean that you get away without having a random opener. We're both lovers of the beautiful game. So my random opener for you is, please give me a solution to the lack of sport we have right now.
Well, I'd like to say that we're both lovers of the beautiful game, but your love is misdirected.
It's going to be one of those episodes, is it?
It most certainly will be. But in any case, to your question, can I offer a solution to lack of sport? Playing sport now, we're allowed to head out. So me and the wife have been taking a football down to the park with the dog and kicking that around, which has been good fun. Or just plenty of FIFA, like esports. Like I've never played so much FIFA in my entire life, but my team is looking ridiculous right now.
Brilliant.
I would say that esports probably has done a terrible job during this time, because I would have thought that this has been their time to shine, and I haven't seen anything.
Wow.
I don't know whether that's whether that's on purpose or what's happened, but I would have thought esports should have shone a lot more in these past 2 months.
Yeah, so, good point.
Yeah, but
very good point.
Play sports.
Okay, excellent. Just finally on that piece of knowledge, when you kick that football in the park, in your brain, who are you?
You know what? One of my biggest memories is being in the school playground, and it was the week after Jamie Redknapp scored directly from a corner, I think.
Okay.
And that's such a bad memory, because obviously Redknapp was a Liverpool player at the time. So I'm not going to say him. My dog is named after Eric Cantona. So I'm going to go for Cantona. Although I would add that I've never been a glorious striker. I've always been an industrious centre half who specializes more in getting in the way of things rather than playing the beautiful game beautifully.
Yeah, me and you both. Yeah, getting in the way is the right word there. Absolutely. Okay, Joe. Moving swiftly on to like marketing things, which I suppose people are tuning in to listen to. That'd be helpful. So the reason that I asked you back on, and thank you so much for doing it, is, first of all, can you briefly explain what you've been up to in the past few months, and then we can dive into some actionable tips as to what you've been up to in the past few months and how that's worked.
Of course. So for those of you who aren't familiar at all, I run something called the Marketing Meetup. I won't go into what it is in this episode, because I think we've spent enough time covering that sort of stuff in the previous episode, and it's fairly easy to find it online. But in effect, we run events for marketers, and that's the short story. Mm-hmm. Prior to COVID starting, we just sort of found a real sort of sense of momentum. We were supposed to be running 140 events this year in person, and we'd just started in New York in February. Wow. So we'd started in the UK 4 years ago, and we just started branching out into New York and the States and stuff like that. And then boom, COVID hit, which, you know, we are far from victims of coronavirus. There are far worse people who have been impacted by it in far more meaningful ways than we have been. But the direct impact was that, for us at least, we had to cancel all of our events. So that was 140 events across 14 locations, 14 events a month, because we have 2 months off. Gone, done. That was scary. I'm a year into being a founder. The Marketing Meetup's been running for 4, but 3 of those were as a hobby. So when it became clear that we weren't going to be able to run in-person events, then it was it was about taking the next step. It was about figuring out what we could do to make things sustainable, to continue working with our business. I probably spent about 4 or 5 days just feeling really, really sad, actually, about having to cancel the events. And I allowed myself that time as well, because I've been working hard for the past 4 years to create this into a business, into a community. And that was in its present form at the time, that was gone. Anyway, after those 4 days had sort of gone by, I sort of decided that the greatest freedom that we have as humans is the ability to react to the situations that are put before us. So I spent my Saturday and my Sunday doing 2 things. The first was learning the hell out of Zoom and how to use it, and also researching lots of sort of like webinar platforms and that kind of thing. But then the second was getting in touch with the most famous marketers and non-marketers that I could think of, just to say, hey, we're trying to do something for this amazing community. We can't do it in person anymore, but would you like to get involved in a webinar? I think my exact words were something to the effect of, there are a lot of scared people out there right now, but hopefully we can give them something to look forward to. And wonderfully, we had a series of people say yes. So over the course of the last 8 weeks, we've moved our business away from in-person offline events to purely online. We've done this in 2 different formats. We've had webinars, which have been attended by up to 800 people at a time. And then, with an additional several thousand sort of engaging in the podcast or the YouTube videos. And then secondly, also a format which replicates networking. So that's called Conversation Club. And that was a format where people can come in and just have an opportunity to chat with other marketers. So yeah, these past 8 weeks have been crazy. I mean, we had an unbelievable sense of momentum in the in-person events heading into the crisis. But now we've built an incredible sense of momentum online instead, which has been hard work, but also a lot of fun, and will be something that after Corona's finished, hopefully if that day comes, then we'll continue doing with our business after it's all done, which is pretty cool.
It's a really interesting case study, and I use it in workshops, and I proudly tell people about it, because I think you've done an excellent job in utilizing what's available to provide the best solution at this moment to your community. What I'd like to get across today for people listening is just some actionable tips, actionable steps when the SHIT hits the fan, so to speak. So the first thing would be, when your external circumstances change, when things that you cannot have an impact on change, but you have to change within it. What's the first thing you should do? So I know it took a moment of reflection or a couple of days. Is that the first thing people should do, or should they just run around like headless chickens pressing loads of buttons, and hopefully some of those buttons are the right ones?
I think you've nailed it in the sense there that you can't really help how you react to things in the first instance necessarily. But I think it is important to allow yourself that opportunity to have that reaction and examine it and figure out why you're feeling what you're feeling. For me, I probably had the benefit of a small amount of time, because events were one of the first things to go when coronavirus struck. So even when I did what I did, I was probably 2 weeks ahead of the curve in terms of everyone else starting to work from home and that kind of stuff. So I did have the benefit of a little bit of time, so I was able to examine those feelings. But then the second thing is that, sort of going back to that quote, that you do have the ability to, at some point, after you've worked through those initial feelings, choose how you respond to something. That is a freedom that ultimately nobody can take from you, that you can choose your reaction to certain circumstances. So for me, that was probably reverting to my default personality type, which is just one of sort of general proactivity and one of looking to help people. And that came through in the message that I sent through to the speakers, but also the act of even getting in touch with the speakers. So I think there's a recognition of how you're feeling right now. There's a recognition of the problem, but then there's also a stage which is like, okay, there's this problem. What can we do to solve it? And ultimately, it's. I think one of the greatest things that I've ever, or one of my sort of superpowers, I guess, is a sense of agency, which is that I control my own fate. And even though these things can happen externally, taking the responsibility upon myself to say, okay, it might have changed externally, but this is for me to now solve. I think that's the type of thing that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that's really cool. Taking that area of responsibility and just seeing that there are different ways of doing things, and sometimes it does take that circumstance that is completely out of your control to get you to do that first step, to have that conversation with yourself, to work out what is the best route forward. So all this happened, and you had to go from in-person events to purely an online offering. So what practical stages did you take to get to, say, that first online event?
So I guess there was a few. So I've already mentioned the examination of platforms. So for me, it was quite clear that Zoom was going to be the best platform that I could use. The reason for that was that it had the functionality, but also the stability that I needed. I did look at stuff like Livestorm, I think it's called, which would have been a good webinar platform, but I knew that I wanted the networking sort of scenario to continue existing. And Zoom has a great breakout rooms functionality in Zoom meetings, which enabled us to be able to do a conversation club too. There was also the issue of the people, as in who we were going to get to come and speak. And I became very aware early on that the differentiation between online events and offline events was going to be fairly small. So one of the things that was going to be really important was the caliber of speaker that we got coming along. So it was important that we got that level of people coming too. Thirdly, there was something about the positioning of the packages. So rather than just saying networking group, we decided to call it conversation club. Now that's a stupid thing in many ways, but it's also a very relevant thing because that moves it away from just like barefaced networking or come along and speak with people to like, okay, I've got a thing which I can hang. I know what this thing is every week that's happening. It's Conversation Club, which is not a great name, but it says what it does on the tin, and that kind of builds that sort of association. So there's almost like a branding piece there, I guess. That's probably where I'm coming to with that. And then finally, there was the marketing of the events. So one of the things that we, we had our marketing somewhat curtailed in a sense because one of our biggest channels was A, going to be word of mouth, or B, was going to be from one event to another. So at the end of the Manchester Marketing Meetup, as an example, we can say the next event will be here. And, you'd immediately get 50 or 60 signups on the day that sort of say, yeah, we're going to be here for next month. But obviously that's not going to happen anymore. So we had to sort of get a bit more inventive. I think we'll probably end up speaking a little bit more about communication later on. So,
yeah, absolutely.
I won't jump ahead.
There's one thing that I just wanted to pick up on there. You said the caliber of speaker. Was it always an intention, or it was the almost a flick of a switch, a light bulb moment that these people, the chances of these people traveling a long distance from different countries or whatever, take Mark Ritson, for example, who lives in Tasmania, the chance of him flying over to give a 30-minute speech at the Marketing Meetup, regardless of how excellent those meetups are, is very slim. Yeah. So was it an opportunity to get that caliber?
For sure. I think you have to caveat everything at the moment and sort of say that we'd all much rather this situation not be happening. But there was most certainly an opportunity there. when I sort of mentioned all this to my mum and what was happening, then she sort of said that I was channeling my granddad a little bit, in the sense that he was just very, this is a terrible term, and forgive me for using it, but it's probably it's what she used. She said that he was just very ballsy, and in anything that he chose to do, he would always just pursue it very doggedly, and I think maybe for that weekend alone, I would probably channel my granddad a little bit, which was just like, if this thing's going to be crap, if this situation's going to be crap, then let's try and make it the best of it. So that's probably the reason why I ended up getting in touch with those folks.
That's cool. And you've just gone a little bit cooler in my expectations as well. That's fantastic. I love anything like that. Brilliant stuff. So yes. So moving on to the actual infrastructure of what these events and how you build up to them look like. Any changes in? I know you mentioned one in terms of people sign up straight away. So what's that looking like in the changes you have to implement to get people to sign up and to remember to actually turn up as well?
Mm-hmm. So infrastructurally, then our two main channels at the moment are email marketing and my LinkedIn personal brand, more than anything. This has been great in a way, but it's also presented a challenge, because I am very, very conscious that I don't want to be beating those drums so hard that eventually people just start drowning them out. So it's been a real balance in terms of making sure that our communication has been on point, really, and sort of just interesting that people want to continue to engage with it. In terms of the website, previously a lot of our event signups took place via meetup.com. We moved this to our website, which has actually been brilliant. So year on year, the Marketing Meetup website traffic is something like 4,000% up or something like that.
Wow.
And that's because we moved all our events signups onto that page. So, that's been great. So, you can go to the marketingmeetup.com/events and you'll see the list. Whereas previously you had to go to the respective location pages to see when the next event was closer to you, type of thing. And so that's been great.
Sorry, Joe. Do you think you'll, one, maintain that, and two, were you using a particular software, a plugin? Like, how did that come about?
For sure. So yes, we'll definitely continue that, because that's been great.
4,000%, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, in all seriousness, that's also brilliant for the sponsors, because they get more exposure on the website as well, which means it's another channel for them to get exposure, which means that for us, our revenue becomes more secure. The second part of that question would be, sorry, could you just remind me of the second part of the question?
Absolutely. So you're gonna maintain keeping it on the site, and rightly so. Why wouldn't you? What kind of software is behind the scenes? Is it like a plugin, or is there something
No,
that you're
yeah, so
utilizing?
it's janky as anything. So I've just got a table which I've HTML coded myself, which is just a table row after table row with a redirect link at the end of it to the respective sign up pages. It's shanky, but it works. So,
But
I mean, to be honest, it doesn't need to be more complicated than that, though, does it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I think some people overcomplicate it, or they look for that quick fix. And doing those two things, you can either lose your audience because it becomes too confusing, or because you've got that quick fix, you're never truly in control of it. So it makes perfect sense. Plus, you've always got to look at it from the customer's point of view, and I can tell you, as a consumer of the Marketing Meetup, that you can't tell that from going on that page.
That's good. That's good to know. I mean, so one thing that I have learned is that the way that, so I've built the Marketing Meetup website myself, just using Divi, and the one thing I've learned about the site over this period is that it caches itself really, really hard. So any changes that I make to the website, like the first few weeks, people were coming up to me saying, "Oh, I can't find this, I can't find that." It's like every time I have to empty the cache on my site, otherwise those changes just aren't reflected elsewhere. That's like a really nerdy marketing thing, but like it's the type of thing which like absolutely makes a huge difference in terms of how people engage with these sites. So important to be looking at that kind of thing.
If you don't know what caching is, it's like check it out, because it is hugely important. And that links quite nicely onto something you were previously saying about a conversation club.
Yes.
For me, and I'm saying this more and more to marketers, it's all about that 1%. And yet, calling it conversation club, it's like a tiny little thing, that tiny little 1% of the overall marketing meetup. But you start adding those 1% up, and it starts to make a huge difference. And not many people do that, or they don't give it the consideration it deserves to move those 1%. They always look at how can we move this 50%? And in doing that, you're missing the big picture.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Rory Sutherland says it best when he says sweat the small things. And I think it's so true that everything that the Marketing Meetup does has been accumulation of those 1% changes, even to the point of like in our email out to the community, we'll say, hey, Peter, you extraordinary dragon, or something like that as our salutation, or you know, something that's just like a little bit different but also like really positive and unique and will grab people's attention. Yeah, I mean that's how our brand voice is. But like another example would be signing off the email with love rather than kind regards. You know, and it's just like these 1% that like I get emails now, and I've had a few people do LinkedIn statuses, which is like, oh, I love the Marketing Meetup, and how they say hello at the beginning of their emails. And it's like, that's not anything particularly crazy. It's another 10 seconds thought, but it's the type of thing that does add up for sure. So I'm definitely with you.
Yeah, be memorable as well. You know, it's be different, be memorable. There's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
Links nicely onto actually communicating with your audience. So you did a lot of communication through digital platforms beforehand. I know that, but did this change at all? Did the tone, did the style, or anything like that, or the communication? How often you communicated? Did anything like that change?
Yeah. So I think to start off with, then everything was kind of about empathy. It was about making sure everyone was okay. You know, people weren't necessarily in a good headspace as a collective society. I think we're all like a little bit worried, a little bit unsure what's going on, that kind of thing. You know, and you saw a lot of that. You know, everyone started doing it like 2 or 3 weeks later. You know, with the "we're there for you" and stuff like that. But like, I think that it was the right thing to do, was just take your foot off the gas, and just check in with people as humans first. So as an example, one of the Wednesday at 2, so every Wednesday at 2:00 we send an email to the whole community, and usually they're either very informative or very irreverent, in the sense that, you know, we've rickrolled our entire audience. We've sent a message from Sean Paul to the community and stuff like that. But like,
I'm going to have to link to that now, aren't I? I'm going to have to link to that.
It's like the greatest email I've ever done. I was actually secretly proud of that. But like one week we used that opportunity in the Wednesday to literally to send an email, which was, "Hey Peter, how are you?" And then I think the third line was something like, "Honestly, please do reply. We're here. We're there for you. Love, Joe." And that was it. That was the whole email. There was no like, you know, fanciness. There was no links, etc., etc. But what I had for the next day and a half was about 400 emails from folks in the community coming back to me and saying, "Actually, I'm okay," or "Actually, I'm really sad, and I don't know what I'm doing right now, and this is scary," and stuff like that. And we replied to them all. And you know, we either replied to them all either in email form or with a personalized video. You know, and it's not the type of thing that like I shout about and stuff like that, but I think it just goes back to having that genuine concern and authenticity and sort of empathy. And it's a shame because when we have these discussions about marketing and we use words like vulnerability, authenticity, and empathy, they immediately get relegated to like buzzword status. Um, but when you take them back to their true meaning, and it's just like a genuine human to human concern for one another, I think we demonstrated that in those moments, which is why people have continued to be on that journey with us now.
Absolutely. And I'm still waiting for the personalized video from the CEO of Sainsbury's to land in my inbox to say that he really cares that I haven't bought my £1/2 of ham this week. And don't worry, we're opening more lines to take care of you, Peter, but I'm still waiting for that.
That's it. I know it's mad. I mean, those emails which, are subjected with a message from the CEO just absolutely kill me because they're doing the opposite of what they need to right now, which is reassuring or showing a bit of personality or humility. I would say that all that empathy, authenticity and vulnerability, that was kind of like the first phase. I would kind of say that we're like now in like the second or third sort of phase of this sort of COVID reaction where, people were first scared and now they settled, and now they're kind of like settled / restless to sort of get back to a semblance of normality. So with all of that, I think comes a change in the tone of your messaging as well. So while I don't think now is the time for humor, I do think we're allowed to have a little bit more fun, which I do think there's a line between the two of them. But I think that's an important point to make now, that I think there is a bit more freedom to kind of just get a little bit closer to normal communication and sort of still have fun, but a bit more normal.
And if you're not signed up to the Marketing Meetup emails, please do so, even if it's just for the little GIF that is usually part of that email, because Joe loves a good GIF, and rightly so.
Absolutely, it's an important part.
Yeah, definitely 1%, absolute 1%. So just moving back to a bigger picture, then just a couple more questions with a few actionable tips on. This first one, how do you prevent yourself not just hitting that big red panic button?
I guess that panic button is going to look different to everybody, right? So for me, if my panic button, I don't know what that would have looked like, to be honest, because truthfully, people have been so kind about how we reacted to stuff, but on one level, I can't see how we could have reacted any differently other than laying over and dying. Not in a physical sense, and please don't take that as a slight on everything that's going on right now. But in terms of in the business world, then rather than shutting the doors, it was like, okay, what we're going to do about this situation. So I think, as I say, my immediate reaction to all of this was sadness and feeling lethargic and not wanting to do anything and just staring blankly at my screen and all those things. But I just took the time to examine those emotions, feel okay that was what was happening, and sort of bled them of their power over me through internal inspection. And when those feelings didn't have the power which they did over me, then I was able to act with a clear mind and do something about it in a productive way. Panic doesn't really help anyone anywhere, anytime. So if you're able to bleed panic of its power over you, then you can start acting productively.
Let's fast forward to 12, 18, 24 months, however long time you want to consider. And I suppose two things for me, really. One, how would the marketing meetup look in a year or 2 years time? And I'm not talking about global domination or anything like that. I'm just talking about what you've implemented now, what you previously had,
Yeah.
and is it going to be a mixture of the two, or however? What do you feel that would look like? And then secondly, how can we better prepare for change, or how would you better prepare for change for things that are out of your control?
So for the marketing meetup, I think we'll be taking a lot of inspiration from this time, and definitely continuing with the digital element of it. I don't think we'll go digital for every event, because there's just so many of them that it would kind of, I still want an event to feel like an event, rather than just something else that's happening that day of the week. So for that reason, we'll probably pick and choose the stuff that we go digital with, but where we were put just offline before, now we'll start to bring in online elements. So that's been great. In terms of preparing for change, it's an interesting thing, because I guess change comes in many forms, right? And without knowing what that change is going to be, then it's quite difficult to prepare for that thing. That being said, I guess there's frameworks which one can develop, which gives yourself the opportunity to reflect and adapt to situations. And then the second bit of that is also our values. I mean, if we're cognizant of the things that matter to us, and the reasons why we're doing things, then that gives us a compass to make decisions quite quickly. So for me, even though the Marketing Meetup is an events company, it's hitting a broader purpose of spreading kindness in the world. And I don't say that as like some knobhead thing that you put on the wall or whatever, like genuinely the thing that, if I was to die tomorrow, I would want people to think that I'd, spread a little bit of kindness and left that in them, that they felt kinder for having met me. So the reason why that's useful is that when you come to a situation for change, you're able to say, okay, if that's the number one thing that's most important to me, how are we going to do that new thing? How are we going to do that thing in this new scenario? So you gain that compass, and that's not something that is a short process necessarily, but it's certainly a useful one to negotiate these periods of change.
Cool. Like it. Are you ready for some quickfire questions then?
Sure thing. Yeah, sounds good.
Aces. Right. What's that source of info you can't live without?
I'm going to say that this is so bad, but like, I spend so long digesting content with the Marketing Meetup that it's the one place where so I'm sorry, but that is the number one place for me, because I spend so long. If I was to point to another one, then I, on my dog walks every day, then I'll usually be listening to an audiobook of some form. So
cool.
The one I've just finished is Rework by David Heinemeier Hansen, and Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl, which sounds very deep, and it is, but it's a bloody good book. So definitely recommend it.
Aces. Who's that one guest you haven't yet had at a marketing meetup? Seth Godin's the white whale, and it might happen one day. There's a whisper. Brilliant. Cool. Love it. We want that whisper to get a bit louder. So if anyone's got any contacts out there, shout out. Name your one go-to marketing channel.
LinkedIn is my number one. It's been kind to me. It's been hard work over 4 years building an audience and stuff like that. And it's been very much value led, but it's an upside down social media network at the moment, in the way that while everyone else is cutting reach, LinkedIn is still giving it away like sweets. So yeah, I think it's a golden opportunity right now.
Cool. What's the most important thing to know about marketing right now?
Fundamentally, it hasn't changed. Marketing is still the same thing. It is, for me at least, you define marketing by meeting the needs of the customer, and it's just the needs that have changed right now. It's not marketing. I would go one step further, which has been a recent development in my thinking, however, that marketing is not only meeting the needs of the customer, but we can also be taking a leadership role in the world, and sort of defining a change that we want to make in the world and actually marketing that change. So I think that's also important.
Cool. Like it. Excellent. So Joe, final question, most important one. If people want to find out more about yourself, get involved with the Marketing Meetup, which of course they should do if they're not already, where are you pointing them? Where should they go?
themarketingmeetup.com, or find me on LinkedIn at Joe Glover.
Joe, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And you have the title of being the first guest with a second podcast.
For 2 hours.
Yeah, shush. Thank you.
Take care, mate. Thank you very much.